with the complexity and the enormity of the federal government today?
What under the President Clinton's executive order, my office reviews, and actually what we do is we conduct an interagency review. So we would engage Tom Sullivan's office as well as other agencies on all regulations, both before they're proposed in the Federal Register and again before they're issued in final form. All regulations that are classified as significant. So of the 120,000, I'd say probably about a little over 20,000 of those went through the interagency review that we coordinate. And we review them. Do you want more details on how we...
I'm just wondering, of the percentages that are reviewed, subject to review or whatever, are there any changes that actually occur as a result of the review? And this is not criticism of anyone. I just know that there's only so much time in a day. You only have so much in the way of staff. The ability to actually accomplish that particular task. I mean, how realistic is that? And in accomplishing that task, how many of these regulations actually get sent back for tweaking, review, total overhaul, and such?
Usually when I'm sitting in the seat, I'm getting criticized for changing too many regulations.
Oh, that's a good criticism.
I can actually give you statistics on that, because when our conclusion of review would, there are three options. One would be, or four options: withdrawn by the agency, consistent with the executive order with changes, so that means changes took place as a result of the interagency review, consistent without change, or return to the agency. And we have statistics on how many are in each of those categories. I'll be happy to give you that.
Yeah, if you would, and I think it's some measure, and it's good to actually share that with many individuals that, or small businesses that may be in contact with, in saying, look, we do have someone out there, and this is not about fixing blame, and I think Mr. Westmoreland and I are together on this. This is about fixing the problem, and as a matter of fact, Mr. Sullivan's initiative and everything came to light as a result of another hearing we had. Now, let's say it's ongoing. Now you come in after the fact. We have the regulation out there, and we're talking about 610 and such. How do you function even in that particular environment? What is the best vehicle? How do you actually do that? How do you perform?
Our focus has been primarily on the new regulations. And so I think that's where you'd see the greatest effect is on the regulations. But as you say, it's complicated. We don't know what the real impacts will be, and it is important to look at regulations that are in place. To do that, we've sought recommendations from the public for over several years, and what we're doing is, in response to those recommendations, we're going back to the agencies. We've done similar to what Tom's R3 does. Identified priority regulations for reform, gone back to agencies, and are working with those agencies on completing those reforms, I hope, before I leave office.
And thank you very much, and which leads me right into what Mr. Sullivan's been doing, because I think all eyes are probably in your office, Mr. Sullivan, and for guidance, because you are basically in charge of being this advocate for all these small businesses. Someone's going to assume you'd be keeping pulse on what's going on out there and identifying. So I do want to commend you, the fact that the PR initiative that you took. I think that's a great vehicle, and that's what I'd like to do, is maybe concentrate my question on a couple of things about, and for the benefit of the audience, we were having another hearing in which Mr. Sullivan was testifying on the Regulatory Flexibility Act, and I was suggesting that we should have some sort of a site, Ask NEDIA, or complaint, and meaning NEDIA, not out of disrespect, but actually a great deal of affection and admiration. Chairwoman Nydia Velasquez, that everybody, she's the chair of the Small Business Committee, and you would just go in on the internet and you would file your biggest grievance against some regulation. And so Mr. Sullivan informed me, he says, well, we already have that. And Nydia was very happy to hear that it would not be her website or whatever. But Mr. Sullivan, so we're identifying vehicles on how do we get this input from the small business community. And so you have something here, but in our discussions in the office the other day, I think one of the concerns, of course, is one, that we do something, and that's what we're doing here, and that we act on it, and you'll have your own recommendations, but also about continuity. So let's say during your tenure and during Ms. Dudley's tenure, and who knows what 2009 holds, other than it's going to be a new administration, and maybe we can be of assistance to make sure there is some continuity regardless of changing of the guard, whether it's a McCain administration or Obama administration. There are great changes. So what are your views on vehicles such as 3R? What else can we do to identify those regulatory schemes that really do need some reform from the ground up? What can we do within the agencies and departments so that they meet their own responsibilities in that regard? And then about continuity.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think primarily to make the regulatory review and reform initiative work, it will depend in large part on the oversight mechanism here in the House and also in the Senate. The administration can work as aggressively as possible, but without the type of oversight insistence that this committee is looking over agencies' shoulders to make sure they are sensitive to the burden on small business, it won't work very well. The R3 initiative, even though I'm very proud of it taking place under my leadership, is an acknowledgement that there's been a law on the books for 28 years that hasn't worked very well. And we're excited that working with that law, the Regulatory Flexibility Act, has progressed enough to have this type of initiative, but we're still in the infancy about looking at how do we take the existing $1.1 trillion regulatory burden and how do we streamline, downsize, and modernize it to lessen its impact on the small business community. So I think the simple answer to your question is this type of initiative will depend very much on the vigilance of this oversight committee to make sure that agencies, when asked by the small business community, and please keep in mind, I am simply a megaphone for that small business community. My job is to connect Main Street with government agencies and hopefully have those agencies have a better result. To the extent that this committee makes it clear to those agencies that you are looking over their shoulders to make sure that when Main Street small businesses voice their concerns, they are heard and responded to, will go very far in making the R3 initiative a success.
And I apologize, it is R3. And again, I just commend you for that effort. But I think it is important that you have advocates on this committee, and hopefully we'll be back for the 111th Congress so that we can be making those recommendations regardless of who may be in charge at that point in time. One last question is, it is important, though, to deliver, and that is that we heard, not only heard, and that it was credible and a legitimate complaint, and that there are changes. I think the surefire way to frustrate your effort is if we don't respond. So that's imperative, is it not?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, you've recognized really what GAO has recognized as a failing of the implementation of Section 610. The Government Accountability Office, GAO, did a review recently and said that over the period of 5 years, agencies had actually conducted 1,300 610 reviews. And that seems like a great number. The problem is that many small businesses and folks in the small business community are first unaware that these reviews happened. To the extent that there are positive outcomes of these reviews, I don't think that those have been adequately explained or described on how they benefit a small business's bottom line. So this R3 initiative, the Regulatory Review and Reform Initiative, is also in part to help agencies to say, you know, the credibility of the Office of Advocacy, our relationship with small businesses, is at an all-time high. Let us use that credibility to make your reviews of rules and regulations worthwhile. And to the extent that you do something positive, then let's amplify that positive so that a small business owner knows that it affects their bottom line, because the disconnect that exists between reviews or the lack of reviews, according to GAO, is harming the 610 implementation. So we're hopeful that this initiative long-term gives agencies the ability to seek approval of reforms that they take and not hide it from public comment, from small business comment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sullivan. And my question, Mr.